Could you start by telling us your name and your branch of service?
Okay, my name is Earl Canipe. I was in the Air Force
Okay.
from 1953, February 1953 to February 1957.
And what was your rank when you left
Staff
service?
Sergeant.
Staff sergeant. Okay. And what's your connection to this area? What brings you to this part of the
Well,
world?
I've been, after I got out of the service, went to UT, finished up there. I got into the nuclear industry and then came here to get into the coal industry
Yeah. Where did you work in the coal industry?
with the Pittston Company.
Oh, you were with Pittston. Okay. Okay. Um, how and why did you enter the military?
Oh, I was eligible for the draft after I had finished college at Mars Hill College in North Carolina. I was subject to the draft. I was trying to find a job. In fact, I had one. They found I was eligible to be drafted. And so rather than just being drafted and going into the service, I wanted to go into the Air Force.
Okay. And what were some jobs you had while you were in the service?
Okay, I was radio operator, and the airplane we had at that time was the C-119 flying boxcar, and I put in 1,143 hours during the time I was there.
Okay. What were some places that you lived while you were in the service?
I was first of all out at Lackland for basic training. Then I went to Biloxi, Mississippi for radio training, and then to Seward Air Force Base in Smyrna, Tennessee. And then from there, I got picked to go to Charleston, South Carolina with a special unit, a special mission that was being established in various places. And unfortunately, had to go by train from Charleston, South Carolina, over to San Francisco, and then by ship over to uh, Japan. And Hawaii was the only state that I had not either flown over or landed in. I had to wave at it from the ship. I sure was glad that I had chosen the Air Force.
Could you tell us about a time when you were in the service that something that happened to you while you were in the service?
Well, actually, the first trip that I made was by myself as a radio operator, was over to Panama. I didn't, most people didn't really think about the fact that we were licensed as radio operators. As when we went into to Panama, I heard this fella on the radio, and you had to tell him how many people were on board. So this fella said, "There's 26 SOBs and one radio operator," and I'm sure that the people who heard him say that laughed, but they also suspended his license. And I think I had some close calls. I think one of them was we had an indication we had a fire in one of the engines. Was out in Oklahoma, had to make an emergency landing, and of course once we came down, we had the co-pilot who was making the landing. He did a 3-point landing. You don't do that with a nose gear. But then after we got out, after we landed, we got all bailed out on the side. It was supposed to be on fire, and of course it was a false alarm trip.
Well, it sounds like you did a lot of traveling. Did you write letters home during that time? Do you,
And
did you write letters home from those places?
yes, I wrote letters to my mother, and I was able to collect those after I got back home. Also, I had a girlfriend, and I was writing letters, and unfortunately, when you're in the service, sometimes the heart goes fonder for somebody else.
Is there anything that you learned while you were working in the military that you used or that helped you with your civilian career after?
Well, I was when I was in college, I had learned shorthand, and I've forgotten shorthand. I learned Morse code, and I've forgotten the Morse code except for SOS.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think really, I guess just the discipline, what was available, and all that. I should probably have stayed in the military for a career, but saw this lady. She caught my eye, I caught hers, and it was just one thing happened. I got married, and so I think, but I had tried so many things before when I was just a kid growing up, and I thought I was going to be going into the furniture factory or the cotton mill, so I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to classes, made bad grades and all that. So I was lucky to get into college. And then when I got into Mars Hill College, I began seeing what was in books, and they let me into Mars Hill College. I don't know why, but they gave me an opportunity, and I finished 2 years in 1 year on there was a civic organization that gave me an opportunity to have a loan, which I paid back when I went into the service. But then when I got into the University of Tennessee, I worked in a bookstore, and all those books that they had, I found that I could get books that had been used for a lesser price.
What would you tell young people about military service? What would you tell young people who were looking at maybe going into the
I think
military?
everybody ought to have some, who are eligible and can get into the military ought to do that. Matter of fact, I think the people who are in any position of responsibility within the government at least ought to have an appreciation for what the military really is. And during the time that I was there, everything was done by the book, and it still is. And I think what they're doing now in making the military what it is supposed to do, I think that we've had people who really haven't paid attention to what the military has done for this country. This country is what it is because of people who really paid the ultimate price. Those are the real heroes.
Thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate your insights.
Okay.